morning and welcome to Matt Nair on air. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, and Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up for the last half an hour of the show, segment we call Audio Sorbet, where we lighten things up, get away from the news, and take a breath. Today we're doing an audio sorbet / audio gripe.
Yes.
Let me tell you something, boy.
Yes, audio gripe is coming back after the 10:30 news. This has to do with photographs and what you photograph and if you share these photographs with others.
That just sounded like a precursor to it's going to get dirty.
Well, you'll just have to wait and see. And then we're going to wrap up the show as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is the We Left a Note edition.
There it is.
So stay tuned for that. Right now, he joins us every month for an update for which we're very grateful. He is Darin Von Ruden, the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. Good morning, Darin. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jane and Greg. Thank you for having me again.
Well, another story, this time from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Anna Kleber with the byline, record crop yields won't lead to financial security this year for Wisconsin farmers. Here's why, and it's about the Trump tariffs, because that's what they are. They're the Trump tariffs. I'm curious, Darin, you're a dairy farmer, but you talk to many farmers across Wisconsin, even though I know I don't believe you grow soybeans. But what are you hearing from some of your fellow farmers?
A lot of despair, a lot of frustration, a lot of the uncertainty that we're at. But mainly the frustration of why we're at the point that we're at. We've certainly seen some of the issues with first president tariffs back in 2018 and lost the market share there, and to come back and do the exact same thing expecting different results is not the best way to do things. It's never worked and never will work. So, as of today, China has not bought any new crop soybeans, probably do not intend to. And so that just means bad thing. In Wisconsin here, we're somewhat insulated on the fact that a lot of soybeans do go into animal feed. So whether it's the dairy herds or the pork and poultry industry, we do use quite a bit there, which is going to make the dairymen happy and the poultry and pork producers a little more comfortable, because they're not going to have to pay those outrageous prices for feed if feed prices are high. So it's really not benefiting anybody, though, because the dairy producers and pork and beef or poultry folks want to see their neighbors be prosperous too. So trying to benefit off of somebody else's loss is not something that farmers are comfortable with.
We talk about the first tariff war, trade war, and that resulted in when all was said and done, it was a $16 billion bailout to the farmers to help them with what they had lost because of this very thing happening now. And now Donald Trump is talking about another bailout, this time specifically for the soybean farmers. And we spoke with Pam Yankee yesterday, and she said that money would actually just pay down the debts incurred as part of the farming process.
A lot of farmers already borrowed money for either seed or crops or other stuff like that.
And I'm sure some of them will accept the money because they need to take it and they need to pay down that debt. But really, tell us, they don't want bailouts. They want markets. They want to be able to sell and make money and do a business and keep their farms going. I can't imagine there's a lot of farmers running around Wisconsin saying, I'm going to get a check.
Yeah. The family farm industry that I am involved in and really care a lot about, we want to get our money from the marketplace. Now, with the style of agriculture that we're going to, when you have the investment firms and the lawyers and the doctors that are invested in them, they really don't care where the money comes from as long as they get the money. And so having this type of a portfolio going forward, if you're huge and don't really care about what's going on with the food that we need to produce and need to eat in this country, you're going to continue to take that check. And how do we change that aspect of agriculture and get away from writing these $1 million checks to individuals or investment firms, or in some cases even other countries, because they have have worked through those loopholes in this country to make sure that they can prosper off of us, and we don't even know about it most of the time.
If you're just joining us, Darin Von Ruden is our guest on Matt Nair on Air. He's the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, obviously talking about the tariffs. We want to play a clip for you, Darin, from Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, who talked about now, again, everyone is paying higher prices because of the tariffs. So essentially, when Donald Trump cuts a check to our farmers, he is paying the farmers back money they have already paid in the extra money they're paying on items that have tariffs. But Brooke Rollins, Trump's agriculture secretary, says this is a great thing. Calvin, let's play that clip, please.
Can you tell us a little bit more about President Trump's plan to use tariff money to pay farmers? What does that look like? How much are we talking about? How long will that program last?
You know, it is a very elegant solution, right? The amount of tariff money that is coming into our country is stunning. The president had a vision. He's effectuating the vision. The vision is pretty remarkable. The whole entire world economy is now realigning around American products, which is incredible. But again, to this moment of uncertainty, the ability to offset any payments to the farmers through potential tariff revenue is really where the president wants us to head, and that's what we're looking at very soon. One more.
It's an elegant solution for a problem that this administration created.
Yeah, and they created it back in 2018, and we're going to have the same exact result this time. That means farmers are going to be pushed out of business because we can't afford to stay in business. And and if there was a market out there that could replace losing the Chinese market that we're losing, we wouldn't have some of the issues that we're having. But there's no market out there that's that big that can consume that much of our soybean crop. We're working on some things right now in this country, trying to develop new markets for soybeans, but those markets are 5-7 years down the road. So in the meantime, 40 to 50% of our farmers are probably going to have to call it quits and move on to something else because they simply can't stay in business because they don't have a cash flow.
But doesn't this go back to Trump's first agriculture secretary, Sonny Perdue, who said at the time, "It's go big or go home." And if you can't go big, then you're going to lose your farm and you're going to get bought up by somebody else.
Yeah, which is scary though, because at some point the only people or the only businesses that will be able to afford the farmland and the farms that are getting bigger is either large multinational corporations or foreign entities. And we can't afford to let our food system get into the control of somebody that's not the true American company or true American farmers.
I'm not asking, I don't want you to speak on behalf of all the farmers. That would be very tough for you to do that. But obviously we've talked about this in the past. Some farmers voted for Trump, some farmers did not. What are you seeing on essentially the back end of this now, where like we are post-election, we are almost a year into this first year of his second term, and you mentioned it when we first got on the air that there is a general sense of not excited and there's a lot of uncertainty. But the conversations you're hearing, what are you just hearing from people as far as just the farmers are like the things they're looking for? Because I mean, I'm not a farmer, Jane's not a farmer. I mean, I imagine you just need leadership and you need partnership. But is there also any like resentment towards the way that you guys are being treated, saying like, all right, we're going to slash your marketplace, but we're going to give you some money and then we'll see if you can do anything. But that's, I'm very curious on what the conversations are being had at the kitchen table.
Yeah. So, in private conversations, there's a lot of anxiety, but also, what in the heck is going on? And, I'm hearing more and more from farmers that I know voted for Trump are saying, this is just absolute stupidity. It's nuts that we're in this situation. We should be doing something different. But if you want them to come and say it in public, they're probably not going to say that.
Of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
But,
sure.
The issue there is how do we as leaders in agriculture, and I'm in that spot, how do we make them realize that it does not pay to continue to vote for a party that doesn't care about farmers. The most frustrating part in my position too is my counterpart in the state's largest farm organization has been really quiet on this, and we're not hearing anything out of that organization, and yet for 4 years Biden couldn't do anything right, and so and we're in a lot worse shape today than we were 6 months ago. Even and a year ago we were in a lot better shape because we had really good prices for most commodities. And beef prices were going up, and they're holding up. They're going to be there for a while. But when you look at corn and soybeans, those farmers are in a world of hurt, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Darin, I almost wonder, it feels, again, and I'm going back to the first time around with Donald Trump and Sonny Perdue saying, well, go big or go home. It almost feels like there is a push for some of our farmers to fail so they get bought up by big companies. Let's not forget J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, helped back a company called Acre Trader, which opens up farmland and foreclosed farmland to investors.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation that we're in, because not only are the farmers that have been farming for decades maybe really in trouble, but how do you get that next generation started? And when you have companies like that are just doubling and tripling the cost of land throughout the country, you can't get that next generation started. And if you're lucky enough to have a uncle or an aunt or father or your mother, that owns some land, and they're willing to give you somewhat of a break, you can certainly get into it. But trying to start that next generation is really, really difficult right now. And here in our area, the land prices in the last 5 years have just about tripled. So trying to get that next generation and younger folks, unless you've been given a silver spoon like our president has, you simply can't get into the business.
Well, and Scott Bessent is another one in the Trump administration who I understand owns many, many, many acres of soybeans, I believe in North Dakota. And again, if we start losing some of these smaller farms, they're going to sell and they're going to get bought up by much bigger guys.
Yeah, the biggest thing is diversity, and we're going away from diversity, going into the concentration mode at a faster pace today than we have in the last 5 decades. And if we don't get back to that diversity, our food system is going to be in a world of hurt.
We're going to continue our conversation with the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. Darin Von Ruden is here. You can always join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network, and we will be right back. Good morning. Welcome back to Matt Nair on Air. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, Sweet Calby on the board, coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter.
Sorry, I was about to say something and I realized you were still talking. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'll take it from here. We are joined by Darin Von Ruden, who is the president. I've talked before in public, folks. I'm sorry. What happened right there?
He's new.
Wisconsin Farmers Union. He is the president. He joins us once a month to talk about all things farming. And I know that I actually mentioned to you during the break that we would talk to him about his trip to Washington, you take a trip to Washington, but also something I remember that Darin did want to speak about was the fact that the government is shut down and how that is affecting the farmers right now. I mean, I imagine that payments and partnerships are being held to account and just sparkling right now while the government's doing nothing.
Yeah, and certainly it's year end, so farmers are getting their year end reports done. Can't get those into the Farm Service Agency offices because they're not open. Employees have been locked out of their computers, so they can't even try to do anything for farmers if they could. It's just it's a real frustration. Ultimately, yes, that payment schedule will happen. There's conservation payments that come out every once in a while, so that could be impacted by it. And just really looking at what's going on. Talking with a neighbor here the other day, he said, why are our House of Representatives and our senators and the president even getting paid during this time? Because they don't want to pay other federal employees, so they shouldn't be getting a paycheck right now too. And it's real frustration out there on the hypocrisy that's really on both sides. But certainly when you look at who's in control right now, it's Republicans in all three facets of the government. And they really need to come to the bargaining table and offer something that the other side will agree with, versus what they're doing right now is saying that, no, you have to agree with us on what we want. And, they need the Democrats' help to get the government back open. And right now they're not doing anything to try to make that happen.
And Darin, I have to wonder, I mean, where do farmers get their health insurance?
Well, there's a vast majority of us that are in the ACA. So, looking at that process, you're going to take the government check for the subsidy on your crops, but you don't believe that that you should get the subsidy for the insurance premium, and your neighbors in urban America and the cities across the country shouldn't get that subsidy either. So it's all right if you get it for the farm, but you shouldn't get it for anything else. And, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander is what I always say. And let's, keep the playing field level versus trying to offset one.
Well, these carve outs, right? These special group carve outs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the president's done in agriculture too. He certainly has made sure that the commodity farmers, especially corn and soybean farmers, get a payment as part of the big beautiful bill, but yet took everything away from all of the small producers across the country, and those that are in most need of a little bit of help right now have absolutely no way to get those dollars from the federal government because there's no programs available for it anymore.
And Jane, I'm glad you asked the question and Darin giving the answer, because that's something I think really needs to be repeated, is that, when we think of the ACA, when we think of benefits, whether it's SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid, we tend to put the people who want to do away with it or, quote, save it, they want to put it on the heads of people who live in cities, the ne'er-do-wells, the lazy, the shiftless, all those guys watching television, doing nothing in their basement. But farmers take part in the ACA. Farmers take part in Medicare and Medicaid. Farmers avail themselves to these SNAP benefits. They avail themselves to these benefits. This group that you belong to, who are so lauded by our politicians, are consistently being used as, pawns, and then all of your benefits, with ours too, are being taken away. But they get to control the narrative and say, oh, it's these terrible people who are frauding and lazy and misusing. But really, it's a guy maybe up in northern Wisconsin who needs the ACA to get health insurance. And he's like, I can't pay 75% increases on my premium. Well, sorry.
Yeah. So my son and daughter-in-law are in the ACA program because Brett's farming. Nicole is doing a part-time taking care of grandkids and a couple other kids here. And so health insurance is the only way they can get it through the ACA. And they're looking at their premiums under the current proposals to go up $300 a month. Well, they don't have that kind of money laying around to go up. And, certainly the WIC program has helped in the past, in rural America, and especially farmers. If you're going to just farm, trying to find insurance is absolutely impossible. And the ACA program has definitely helped a lot of farmers across the country. And now we're looking at, getting a payment on one side, but getting in the shorts on the other end.
We're going to keep talking with Darin Von Ruden. He joins us once a month. We always have one day, Darin, we'll just sit and talk about recipes. We'll talk about great things to do with cheese.
Yeah.
This is not that time, unfortunately. Darin Von Ruden is the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. He joins us once a month. Thank you so very much, Darin. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Jane and Greg.